$2,600. And I just want to know if you even have the slightest effort, making even the slightest effort to try to get some of that money back into the pockets of American families, or does that just not matter to the Trump administration?
So what happened is the foreign and domestic importers, right, who are buying foreign goods, not goods from American workers, foreign goods made by foreign workers who had to pay a fee on those foreign goods, those foreign importers' records, domestic importers' records, they can file, they had to pay the tariff, they can get the tariff back. So, manufacturing workers' wages have gone up $2,600, way beyond what the Biden budget lab at Yale has calculated.
They haven't. What we know is that thousands of factory workers have lost their jobs. That means their incomes have gone to zero. But I take it what you're saying, I think I've got your answer here, and that is Trump administration just doesn't care, isn't even lifting a finger to try to get one nickel of the money that was collected from consumers back into the pockets of the consumers. And that certainly is where they are right now. Instead, what you've been doing is searching for other ways to see if you can take money out of the pockets of consumers with tariffs. And just this week, you slapped on new tariffs using an obscure law from the 1930s, plus using something called Section 301. But here's my question. Ambassador Greer, if the Supreme Court strikes down your next round of tariffs, do you have a plan in place for how to return the money that American consumers pay under those tariffs, how to return that money directly to the families who pay? You can do this now. Put a plan in place. Do you have a plan in place?
Customs currently has a website to return any tariffs to the foreign importers' records or domestic importers who paid them, and they'll continue to do that.
I'm asking you about American families, the people you're supposed to be working for. Do you have any plan, if this next round of tariffs are struck down, for how you're going to get the money that is collected from American consumers back into their pockets?
The normal way that customs law worked is that the importer of record, if they pay a tariff, it's overruled, they give it back. There's never been any.
No. Look, I believe that tariffs can be used strategically, quite valuably, but what the Trump administration is doing is picking the pockets of American consumers, and after Donald Trump promised he would lower costs on day one, he puts in place tariffs that have done nothing but raise prices for consumers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, and good morning, Ambassador Greer. So, Ambassador Greer, I am firmly in the camp that, as you and I have discussed, that our trade policy should support good jobs in domestic manufacturing, and that those trade policies should have strong labor and environmental standards. I appreciate what Senator Whitehouse was saying earlier, and that for too long our trade policy has tilted too much towards making it easier for big corporations to send job overseas. And this is not, in my mind, a Democratic or Republican issue. I've criticized Democratic administrations as well as Republican ones for not getting this right. So with that in mind, I have two questions that I want to try to get to with you today. One is around taconite and the other one is around sugar. And I'm going to start with taconite. So as you know, Minnesota produces nearly all of the raw taconite or iron ore pellets that goes into U.S. steel production. That industry has struggled from time to time. As I'm sure you also know, a couple months after the president took office, we saw layoffs at Hibbing Taconite and also at the Menorca mine. Maybe about 600 total jobs gone because of what's been happening. So we have an opportunity to make this right here for the workers in those mines and for those pellet plants on the Iron Range. And I think that we ought to be able to find some agreement on this. I'd like to work with you on this. So here's the opportunity, right? For years, we've done the right thing, and we have levied tariffs on illegally dumped and subsidized steel coming into the United States from countries like China. But we haven't always done the right thing for taconite pellets that feed those steel mills. And so the United States finds itself currently importing ores from foreign sources at the same times that these mines in Minnesota are idle. So my question is, do you think, Ambassador Greer, is there a way that we could think about this situation and get at this, and what are the opportunities to use our trade tools to support domestic taconite from the illegal and I think unfair trade practices that are hurting Minnesota's Iron Range.
So yes, and I appreciate your leadership on this issue. This is something where we can and should work together. I have spoken with some of these companies that are operating and want to operate in northern Minnesota. I think there are trade tools we can use because we are so import dependent right now on some of these inputs. I think if we phase something in a short period of time to signal to the market, domestic taconite is where it's at and where it's going to be,
right.
And so we can wean ourselves off over time.
Right. I would really like to work with you on that because I think it is an opportunity, and the ebbs and flows and the cycling of the taconite industry are a big burden. And there's, I think we can be honest, there's no doubt that the way that the tariff regime has affected other manufacturing sectors in the United States, you might argue in the short run, I would maybe argue differently, has had an impact on demand for domestic steel as well. And so I think there's an opportunity here. Let me see if I can get to the sugar question as well. You know about this as well. You and I have talked about this. Minnesota is one of the #1 sugar beet producing states in the nation, supporting over 20,000 jobs and a $3 billion economic impact just in Minnesota. And it's struggling right now. And as you no doubt know, we have a situation where there is a glut of global supply and from subsidized sugar, that sugar can be sold into the United States with the tariff, after tariff quota, and it's still sold into the United States at lower than the cost of goods sold for domestic sugar producers. And this is causing a lot of struggle in my northwestern part of the state, where producers are trying to figure out, do I sell my shares in the co-op or do I plant beets that I know I'm going to lose money on, for the time being? So can you address this, Ambassador? And as you know, we sold, Senator Hoeven and Senator Slotkin, and I believe Chair Crapo signed this letter as well, raised this with you and Secretary Rollins about the opportunities to open a Section 301 investigation into this.
Yes, Senator, again, this is an area where I think we can work together. I have conferred with the chairman, even the ranking member on these issues on sugar. So we are working very closely with the domestic industry right now to try to assess their view of the unfair trading practices that might persist overseas. That's the legal basis for any Section 301. So we're committed to working with them. We're gathering a lot of information from them right now because we want to see action too.
That's great. And I think, timing is of the essence. We'll look forward to getting a more full report on your plans there, and look forward to working with my colleagues on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Cortez Masto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here. I want to talk a little bit about the aerospace and aviation industries. They, as you well know, they're critical to our country and supporting both our national defense and our tourism and economy. I am hearing concerns from many in this industry that the Section 232 investigation into imports of aircraft and aircraft parts is chilling investment and threatening some aerospace jobs. The administration hasn't yet shown the public any results of these investigations. Do you intend to release these investigations?
So thank you, Senator. This is a critical supply chain where we're quite focused. The investigation you're talking about is a Section 232 investigation under Commerce. I'll tell you what I know about it and then refer you to Commerce, of course. About, I think, 10 days ago, the President signed an action in this investigation saying, listen, this is critical. We are worried about imports. However, we would much rather negotiate with countries potential landing zones on this because it is so sensitive.
Can I ask you a question? Because I recognize it's in Commerce's role, but you're actually negotiating these trade agreements based on these reports, correct?
We work with the Commerce Department to get their input, so like any negotiation.
So these reports would be critical to your negotiations with trade, correct?
Yes. Yep.
So at some point in time, these reports are required under the law.
They exist,
to
yes.
be public. And so I guess that's my question. I'm assuming your access to this information is the result of an investigation that has been completed because you need it for trade negotiation. So once it's completed, it should be available to the American public. And that's my question. It may not be within your authority to release it, maybe the Commerce Department, but I would hope that you would convince them that they should at least follow the law and release these reports to the American public. And quite honestly, Congress has the results of these as well.
I'll raise it with the Commerce Secretary.
I appreciate that. Let me ask you about something that we have talked about quite often, and this is tourism. You talk a lot about a trade deficit in goods, which I so appreciate. But last year, for the first time in decades, the U.S. experienced a trade deficit in our largest service export, and that's tourism. And after running a trade surplus in travel in 2024, we actually experienced a $14 billion trade deficit in 2025. I have seen that in my home state of Las Vegas. We have seen that across the country, quite honestly. With your focus on the trade balance, what is your analysis of why this sharp drop in tourism has happened? Have you looked at this at all?
You've talked to us about this before, so it's something that we think about, and it falls into that bucket of services. And in the overall category of services, we've never exported more services before. But I know for you in Las Vegas particularly, this is an issue. We're hopeful that with the World Cup, we saw an uptick in the past couple of months. We think we've seen a lot of, when I've asked even domestic industry about it, airlines, credit card folks who are doing this, they've seen a lot of internal and domestic. So whether it's imports of tourism or domestic tourism, I think my goal is just make sure that places like Las Vegas are up and running. I'm happy to work with you more on this to identify things we can do. We can work with the Commerce Department on tourism promotion. They have their own bureau to deal with it.
So I appreciate that. Senator Moran and I have introduced legislation to include a travel and tourism working group in the USMCA. Would you commit to supporting that?
I will, yes.
Thank you.
100%, yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let me talk a little bit about critical minerals. And I'm curious, you and I would both agree, critical minerals and critical mineral supply chain is important for this country, right? And so it's an area that I've worked in quite often and talked to you about, and I appreciate your comments. Let me ask you this, and just if you can provide some information. Indonesia has long been had a ban on the export of raw critical minerals such as nickel ore, which has resulted in massive Chinese investment in nickel refining in Indonesia. Last July, the White House released a joint statement with Indonesia regarding trade negotiations that said, quote, Indonesia will remove restrictions on exports to the United States of industrial commodities, including critical minerals. However, shortly after that release in that statement, multiple Indonesian officials, including their Minister of Economic Affairs, disputed that Indonesia would open its exports of raw minerals to the U.S. Again, there was another signing, a trade agreement in February. The White House made that same statement, and then Indonesia again said, no, that is not going to happen. So can you let us know, is Indonesia, are they agreeing to change its laws and regulations so that it will export raw ore to the U.S.? Where are we, and what is the status of that?
Thank you. This is really important to us too, and we want to hold Indonesia's feet to the fire on this as well. What they have, like many countries, they have an export control regime, and they've committed to us to expedite that for us. You can imagine they don't want to be in a situation where everything they produce has to go to one country in the area. So they're trying to balance geopolitically what they're doing. They're working with us. We had a complaint once about some minerals not being able to be exported. We called the Indonesians. They took care of it right away. We have a good working relationship with them. So we just have to keep their feet to the fire to have them live up to these agreements.
Thank you. I know my time is up, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Welch.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Greer, first of all, I want to say that your office has been responsive when we've had questions, and I quite appreciate that. But what I do want to take this opportunity to do is explain to you whatever the intent of the tariffs are. It's really causing a lot of harm so far in Vermont, both the tariffs and the way in which they are variable and changing quite a bit. And I want to take the opportunity to tell you, because I know you're concerned about the well-being of small businesses. I know you're concerned about the well-being of everyday consumers. But the tariffs are really, really troublesome in Vermont. Number one, our tourism is down about 40%. A lot of that has to do with the rhetoric that the president has used, and I don't hold you responsible for that. But the 51st state, the governor of Canada, that rhetoric has really inhibited Canadians from coming down. Steve Wright, who's the head of Jay Peak, a really prominent resort in northern Canada, got a call where 100 people from Canada canceled their trip to the U.S., to Vermont. You can't do anything, I guess, about that, but I hope to the extent you can urge the president to speak in a much more courteous way towards our Canadian neighbors. That's going to help us in Vermont. The other thing we're hearing about, or I'm hearing about, Canada is Vermont's number one trade customer, $631 million worth of goods annually, 3,600 jobs in Vermont. And as a result of the tariffs, let me just give you some examples. And I appreciate you listening, but I really want Vermont to be heard as to the concrete outcomes of what's happening and the way it's being done. Rovers North is a small business in Westford, Vermont. They rehab Land Rovers. For the first time in 50 years, they had to have layoffs. Orvis, which is a world-renowned sports equipment fishing company, has been forced to close over half its stores and has gone through multiple rounds of layoffs. Very heartbreaking for us in Vermont. Jasper Hill Farms is an international award-winning cheesemaker. It was started by two young brothers in Vermont. It has now achieved distinction worldwide. In Hills Farmstead Brewery, which is also started by a sixth-generation young man in Greensboro, Vermont. Both of those have seen their overhead and equipment costs double in price. They're losing business daily to Canadians because they don't come down for their visits to their companies. When the global liberation tariffs were first announced in April, of 25, President Trump excluded more than 1,000 products without providing any rationale for why those specific products were listed. And those exemptions were made, and it appears it was made because whoever was on the receiving end had the ability to contact somebody in the White House to get an exemption. Our Vermonters don't have that telephone number. So we're just getting hit with these tariffs, and it looks like to some extent, if you have access to the administration, you may get an end around and avoid them, which is really troubling to us in Vermont. We are having trouble getting the refunds. I heard the exchange, and I know that you have to follow the law. I heard you explain that. But just going through that has been really tough for us. So I just want you to understand how tough this has been in Vermont. We really value our relationship with Canada, both emotionally and financially and economically. In the way the tariffs have changed constantly, and recently, just I think 2 days ago, the president has announced new tariffs that may go into effect. People just don't know what to count on, and it's hurting us badly. So I guess I'll end by just asking if you can give me some assurance that there'll be more clarity and certainty to the tariff policy and frankly, a respectful engagement, even if negotiations are tough, but where we're treating Canadians as the longtime friends of Vermont that they've been. Thank you for listening, Mr. Ambassador.
Just briefly, because it's out of time. Canada has benefited from the best trade agreement, even under the trade treatment, even under the president's trade policy since last April. The vast majority of what they're sending to us has come in preferentially. It has remained that way. It's been consistent that way. Even now with the tailored actions we took this week, we're fighting against a ban on American liquor on shelves. We're fighting against hard caps on export of American cars. So we've never banned Canadian products. We've never done that kind of thing, but we're fighting against caps on American cheese. I think about your cheese producers. They should be exporting more to Canada. Can't refuse this. So we're trying to balance this relationship, have as much trade, liberal trade in North America as possible while protecting our producers. It's not going to happen overnight. We didn't get into this problem overnight, won't be fixed overnight, but I want to work with you. You list off a lot of companies. I'm happy to meet with them personally and talk to them. Sometimes it's tariffs, sometimes there are other things going on, but if there are things we can do to try to smooth this process for them, I want to work with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Senator Barrasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great to see you again. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. I want to talk about soda ash exports. As you know, Wyoming's Green River Basin is home of the world's largest deposits of naturally occurring trona. It's the mineral that's refined into soda ash. It's Wyoming's top export, supports thousands of jobs across the state, and the industry is facing a serious challenge. That's because earlier this year, producers in India petitioned their government to restrict imports of American soda ash. The result can be a hard limit on how much American soda ash can enter their market, regardless of the price, regardless of the demand. And our soda ash producers can compete with anyone in the world on a level playing field. What we're worrying that is what's happening in India, make sure that we don't get the level playing field. So I was going to ask how you're working to ensure fair market access for American producers like